The C6 Corvette, it's an evolution of the C5 Corvette, which at the time was a revolutionary upgrade over the outgoing C4 Corvette. The 6th generation was produced from 2005 through 2013, and during that 8-year run, it was powered by 4 different power plants. The 400 horsepower 6-liter LS2 was the standard engine from 2005 through 2007. And in 2008, the 430 horsepower 6.2-liter LS3 engine became the standard engine, and it remained so for the final 6 years of C6 production. Starting in 2006, for those that demanded even more horsepower, the C6 could be had with a 7-liter, 505 horsepower, all aluminum American V8, known as the LS7. The LS7 wasn't really a big deal. It was a massive deal. When it was introduced, the LS7 was the most powerful naturally aspirated engine ever put into a production Corvette, and that's impressive. What's even more impressive is that this distinction lasted for almost 2 decades until the C8 Z06 came along with the 670 horsepower LT6 flat plane crank engine. Once the LS7 had been around for just a couple of years, for some very unknown reason, the accounting types at GM waved the magic wand, and they approved the powertrain development engineers to come up with an engine even more powerful for the C6. This time it would be the first supercharged engine to ever be offered in a production Corvette, and it was known as the LS9. Oh, and it was made so that it could be released in a secret Corvette project known within GM as the Blue Devil, which was ultimately released as the ZR1.
It's nice to know America still builds rockets. The 2011 Corvette.
I almost wanted to say ZR1 like all of our European friends do.
This is the Corvette ZR1, which is extremely fast.
Damn it, I'm in America and it's ZR1 around these parts. Once a potential C6 buyer is aware of the 4 different engine options that came in the C6, it's time to make a decision. And more often than not, that decision is based upon budget and skill level. In my humble opinion, I believe that criteria should be flip-flopped, and it should be skill level and then budget. Anyways, in car guy circles, there's an old saying that goes a little something like this: speed costs money, how fast would you like to go? So with that in mind, I'm gonna narrow the focus of this video and zero in on the 2 engines that had the highest production numbers, are the most similar in power output, and are the least expensive of the 4. So for the rest of this video, we're going to be comparing the LS2 engine against the LS3 engine in an effort to determine which one is the best for the Corvette that's going to ultimately be in your garage. Now, I may have just lost a few viewers just a couple seconds ago because it's widely believed that the LS3 is better than the LS2, but is that true? And if so, why is it better? And just how much better is it? Now, those are some pretty good questions, and in my mind anyway, they deserve solid answers. Answers that are a bit more specific than just simply parroting the often heard internet generalizations. So let's dig in a little bit deeper. Which engine is better is going to depend upon what your definition of better is, and that might just vary a little bit from person to person. But since the C6 is a performance sports car, I suspect to a lot of people, which one is better is going to just simply be which one makes the most horsepower. For another group of buyers, better might be which one is more reliable, and yet even another group might consider better to be which one offers the most value, as in horsepower per dollar, provided they're very close in power output, that is. So which engine offers the most horsepower? And of course, this is the easiest and most objective question to answer because this can be measured on an engine dyno. The LS3 engine makes 430 horsepower at 5,900 RPMs, and the LS2 engine makes 400 horsepower at 6,000 RPMs. So if your definition of which engine is best for the C6 is the one that makes the most horsepower, then clearly the LS3 engine is the engine for you. However, if you looked at those numbers, then you may have noticed the LS3 only puts out 7.5% more horsepower than the LS2. How much of a difference does 30 horsepower make when accelerating a 3,200-pound C6 Corvette? It's hard to say for sure because that's going to depend on the driver, the car, the tire, the track, the location, but here are a couple numbers I think are worth considering. Car and Driver magazine has tested both LS2 and LS3 powered C6 Corvettes, and with the LS2 they achieved 113 miles per hour in the quarter mile, and with the LS3 they achieved 116 miles per hour in the quarter mile. Now that's not very much. Perhaps their testing was flawed? Well, Motor Trend magazine is another reputable source, and they've tested both varieties as well. With the LS2, they came up with 113.2 miles per hour in the quarter mile, and with the LS3, they reached 115 miles per hour. So if you average the two numbers together, you get roughly about a 2.5 mile per hour increase with the LS3 engine. Is that a lot? Is that a difference that you could even feel? I don't think so, but I could be wrong. Perhaps your butt meter is more accurate than mine. Oh, and by the way, Motor Week took the C6 ZR1 with 638 horsepower down the quarter mile, and this is the speed that they achieved.
And ripped through the quarter mile in 11.3 seconds at 130 miles per hour.
So if you happen to be a prudent C6 buyer in 2024, you may say to yourself, I prefer the LS3 over the LS2 so long as all other things are equal. And obviously the next question is, what does all other things equal mean? In my mind anyway, if all other things being equal means I want to know the condition of each engine that I'm looking at. I want to know the reliability record of the LS2 versus the LS3. And I want to know if C6s with the LS3 cost more than C6s with the LS2, and if so, how much? Let's start out with condition, and since every C6 is now at least 11 years old, that's going to be on you to do your due diligence and figure out the condition of the car that you're looking at. But the main determinants are going to be how well was your particular car taken care of and how many miles does it have on it. So if you're patient and diligent and you spread out your search for your C6 Corvette over a couple hundred miles, you should be able to find LS2 and LS3 C6s that are in substantially the same condition. What about reliability? Well, besides the harmonic balancer issues that have haunted Corvettes since the C5, both the LS2 and the LS3 are very reliable engines. That last statement may have taken you by surprise just a little bit, because when you hear people talk about these engines, they quickly say that the LS3 is the better engine. And yes, it's a little bit newer and it makes a little bit more horsepower, but to make the assumption that the LS3 is also more reliable than the LS2 would be just that, an assumption. A few years back, someone on YouTube did say that the LS3 is generally a much more reliable engine than the LS2, and that LS2s tend to lose their balance over time. That was news to me and everything that I had ever heard, read, or seen. And since then, I have researched this extensively, and I have still not found anything credible that suggests that the LS3 is any more reliable than the LS2. If you happen to have a link to any credible source and specific information that clearly shows that the LS3 is materially more reliable than the LS2, I would love to see it and share it with the community. Please leave it in the comments below. So all of that having been said, it is my opinion as of the date of this video that both the LS2 and the LS3 engines are extremely reliable if properly maintained. So clearly you can buy a C6 Corvette with either an LS2 or an LS3 in substantially the same condition. And if you agree with the view that they both share similar reliability, then there's only two more things to take into consideration. The first being cost, and the second, which I just decided needs to be addressed, is future modification potential, which may or may not apply to you. It is very difficult to demonstrate with objective precision that LS3 cars are going to cost more than LS2 cars. That having been said, it is my opinion that here in the Midwest, on average, LS3 cars are going to cost around $5,000 more than LS2 cars. Some of the spreads will be more than that and some are going to be less. Every transaction is unique. It's going to depend on how good the buyer is, how motivated the seller is, their situation, and where they live in the country. Let us know by dropping a comment what the spreads are in your part of the country between LS2s and LS3s. I'd be curious to know. So if your plan is to simply buy a C6 and then drive and enjoy it, and modifications are not something you think you'll ever do, then I would not hesitate to buy an LS2 powered C6, especially if you can pick one up for several $1,000s less than a comparable LS3 equipped car. However, if your future plans call for modifications like the tried and true camshaft and headers, then you need to be aware that the LS3's cylinder heads and intake, they do flow significantly better than the ones that are on the LS2. And this becomes more and more important as power levels are increased, and therefore, if possible, you should seriously consider holding out for an LS3 powered C6. Additionally, if you happen to be looking for a manual transmission C6, then know that the LS3 cars came with a stronger manual transmission, the TR6060, so that's definitely an added bonus, especially if forced induction might be in your future. Well, that's a wrap on this one, guys. Tap that like button below if you learned anything, subscribe so you don't miss the next video, and most of all, thanks for watching.